Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. And welcome back, everyone. It's going to happen to all of us, and we are going to grow older. Notice I didn't say we're going to get old. I said we're going to grow older. A lot of stereotypes come along with aging. How many times have you heard, maybe you've said it yourself, I'm having a senior moment? Comes up often in our lives. And I'm a firm believer in the energy flows where the attention goes. So if that's the way you think it, that's the way it will be. Maybe you don't want to grow old in that way. Let's talk about some of those stereotypes today. She is the woman behind a center that is basically a gateway for health, beauty, wellness, and aging services. And the title is the best of what they call this wonderful facility in New Mexico, Center for Ageless Living. Suzette Lindemuth joins us today on the program. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I have to say I'm a little sore because I've been going to my personal trainer as my commitment for the new year to get stronger. So I can definitely feel, I guess, what we call progress.
And doesn't it feel good?
Yes, it does feel good, but it definitely, I'm feeling it.
It's like that. It's a soreness, but a good soreness, because you know you've made some progress there. You know that you didn't take it too far, but you know you're moving in a positive direction, right?
Yes, and I think that challenge is something we're all facing. Is how do we take those baby steps so we continue to age well? And as I said before, I feel like we're all in training for this journey. And clearly being strong physically is a critical part of, what we call agelessness.
I 1,000,000,000% agree with you. And I have a trainer. We haven't worked together in probably a month and a half or so, maybe 2 months. And she's wonderful, except her schedule changed. So I have to move my schedule around, trying to figure it out. Really what it's going to take is more commitment, because she's available really early in the morning or much later in the day. So I got to kind of work it out, but it's so worth it. But to your point, the one thing I realized, and this never, when I was younger, never even thought of it. I didn't even think of this a year ago, 2 years ago. Stretching is so key as you get older. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I think that our joints do get a little less limber, as we say. And I think that's, again, one of those stories we kind of tell ourselves, is that as we get older, we're too old to exercise, we're too old to get stronger, or we're too old to become more flexible. But we know that those are just stories we tell ourselves. And we know that those stereotypes are out there. We see them every day. We even call ourselves names. I mean, every day, not every day, but technology, and we just had a little mix up there. And, we always say, oh, I'm going to get my 12-year-old son to help me because, we're too old to figure it out. But that's really not true. We can figure it out, and we can hit enough buttons that something will work. But we do need to remind ourselves not to get stuck in those stories, that we don't want to limit ourselves. We don't want to say we can't learn something new. The myth that you can't teach an old dog new tricks. We know that's not true. We can learn, and we should learn.
Yeah. And it's the mindset. I truly believe it's once you start thinking that I'm old, or I can't do that, or all of that stuff, you're manifesting looking and feeling old. And I do mean, I'm going to add looking and feeling old, because my friend and I, I'm just going to say, and I'm proud to say, he's a year older than me. Let me just get that out there. But we grew up together, and we don't act our age. And we even joke about it. And people even say, man, you guys are how old? Doesn't even make sense, because we've always been in that mindset. And he's getting older. He has a very, very demanding job. So maybe, and honestly, he'll admit it. He'll say I'm not in the best shape, but I don't even know how. He's an EMT. I don't even know how he does it at his age, but he's still kicking along and still doing it. But I believe most of this comes from the mindset, where your head is at. What do you think?
Well, I agree with that. And those stories that we tell ourselves go over and over. They're like a broken record in our brains. And so we have to really work hard at not listening to them or turning the record off or stopping the noise. And I think it's about taking risks too. I think we're all, I remember when I started traveling when I was in my 20s by myself, and I was a little scared to go by myself. I thought, people are going to think I'm weird because I'm by myself, or I don't have any friends, or, I started really doubting myself. And of course I went and traveled by myself, and it was one of the most rewarding journeys that I've had. And I've traveled a lot by myself since then. And I enjoy traveling with others, but now that as you get older and your lifestyle changes and maybe you've lost your partner or your friends don't have the same availability as you, I think, again, traveling by yourself is something that you can sort of push yourself to do in a really safe way. But I think we do have to take risks. And sometimes that's even in doing sports. Some people are skiing up to their 90s, and yet others are saying at 60, I'm afraid I'll get hurt. I'm afraid this will happen and that will happen. And so I see it even when we change our, the things that we love to do, and we stop doing them because we're afraid of some kind of consequence. But I know that if we don't take risks and we don't continue to try new things and do the things that we love, we lose a quality of life that is critical. And we have to remember that. That's important.
Thank you for saying that. And I'm going to admit it right now. And this is my 2025 bucket list. Here it comes. I've never traveled by myself. I can't even believe I'm saying that. I can't believe I'm even saying that. I've gotten on a plane, went to a destination, and then met others there and that kind of thing. But never, I'm just going somewhere. I'm going to plunk my butt down and I'm just going to do my thing and enjoy it. And I've never done it. And I am very much looking forward to it. But to your point, prior to the last couple of years, I would not even think of that. It would actually be a little bit of fear. Like, I've never done that before. How's that going to go? Now I'm like, get me on a plane. The hardest part about that is finding the time to go at this point. But it's amazing how you evolve and what becomes a priority for you. And I feel that there's a piece missing if you don't do certain things. And it's just sitting inside. I feel that's a piece that's missing that I've never done. And I know it's going to be wonderful. But I think it's also self-discovery. Maybe it takes you, until you're, 50, 60, 70, whatever it is, to really, really figure out who you are. Do you think that might be part of it too?
I do think that that's part of it. And I also think that as we age and we have more flexibility in our lifestyles and choices, we are then faced with this question of what to do with my life and where should I go and what have I not done, and I haven't traveled by myself, I should do that. Those questions come up, and I think it's so important that when you're in that mode where you're getting to the point where, you've been in a career for a long time and you're now thinking of changing that career into a different lifestyle, to kind of ask those questions about yourself and to stop that question that is like, if I stop my job, am I worthless? If I stop my job, will I not have any connection to a community that I used to have? So we have those questions that are going on in our head, and that concept of feeling, worthless or not valuable or too old or an old geezer or a grumpy old man or whatever those name calls that we say to ourselves, we have to remember that we have an opportunity now to change, which I think is a critically important word, to continue to change and to embrace this great opportunity. Not everybody has the opportunity. So if you do, you really need to embrace it and honor it and, use it to the best of your own interests, but the interests of others and your family and your friends. And so there's this whole thing that goes on in your head about what should you do next, or how should you grow old, or what's important, who should you spend time with? And those are good questions to ask, but you have to kind of stop the record and say, okay, I'm going to do something, and not keep asking the question over and over again, but actually take action and build upon your own knowledge, your wisdom that you've had from all these years' experiences, and make good decisions. I think good decisions come with aging and wisdom and grace. And we talk about that a lot at the center, the ability to have endurance and stamina and flexibility, and all of those things that make life easier as you get older to have those qualities. And so you can build those qualities. You can learn how to become more resilient, and you can build up your stamina. You can do all of those things, but you have to be conscious about it, and you have to really stop the negative thoughts in your brain about aging and, thinking that you're going to not have any quality of life because, like I said, most of us have, if you hit the age of 65, the chances of you being to 85 go up significantly. So, when you think about 65, a lot of people go, 65, I'm retiring, I'm old, I'm going to just, take care of my grandkids and be part of that community. And then you realize you have 20 more years to live. So you better say, well, you do have a little more time to explore and to learn.
Change is scary. We have fear with change. Unfortunately, as you get older, there's more fear in there in many of those situations because, how am I going to find a job? If I change jobs right now at my age, is that the word? At my age, how am I going to find another job? How am I going to make this, maybe leave a relationship that doesn't support you? It seems that the fear of change stacks up high. How do we get around that? How do we, I guess, minimize the fear that comes along with that as you get older?
Well, I think the journey can be full of obstacles, and obstacles create fear. And so I think change is something that in itself, it can be extremely positive. And we know change can happen in a second. I mean, you can be healthy one day and in a car accident and your entire world changes. So we know that change can occur quickly. And change also can take time, but generally change is pretty quick. And I think it's the fear of not knowing what's going to happen and some of the obstacles that we put in place because we're fearful of our health, or we're fearful of loss, or we're fearful of the financial impact of a change. So there's a lot of fear around those things that we call the button pushers in our lives. And so in order to feel more comfortable with change is to think about being prepared. Can you be prepared for change? And you can. You can. I think one thing, we all see is how fast the fires took over people's lives, and people's lives changed in minutes. So you do have to be prepared. And for everyone, that journey might be a little bit different. And be financially secure is critical. And that's a hard issue for many, many people. But being financially secure doesn't mean you're rich. I think people misunderstand that. Financially secure means that you have enough resources to sustain your lifestyle as you choose to have it. So some of us have to downsize. Some of us have to change our lifestyles because of financial resources. Some of us have to move in with other people and have roommates, and we move in back with families. We have parents that move in with families. We have younger people that move back in with parents, so, that communal living, occurs. So the obstacles can be identified, and then you can sort of say, I always tell people, what's the worst that could happen? What's the worst that could happen? And of course, you could die. You go, okay, well, that's the worst. I can get prepared. So, I think we have to have some kind of realistic boundaries about what we think are obstacles and what really are challenges and what are really resources. So I think we sometimes get them a little mixed up.
For sure. And you have to identify the difference between what I need and what I want. And sometimes when you go deep into that, it's great having that big house on the hill and the white picket fence and all that, this sometimes an illusory. It's really not what you wanted anyway. You thought it was. Society told you that. But maybe in the end, you just need a cabin in the woods, and you could be 20 or 90. It's whatever supports you, but I think you have to go deep inside, and a lot of us haven't done that and realize what we want. In your journey, Suzette, what's one word now to describe what's important to you right now? Where you are, or where you've been, and it's gotten to this point where you had a realization. What's that? What's the one word that would really kind of encapsulate it?
Well, I think right now for me, and I think the word changes, as your circumstances change it. And I've had some health issues this last year. So right now for me, it's really about my health. And I feel like I have to have a lot of support around that. And luckily I have a supportive family, and that helps. I mean, it's always important to have family, and everybody goes, well, I don't have any family. Well, you do have family. You might not be connected to them, but everybody has a family. And, and that's okay. Your family doesn't have to be your blood relative. It can be the people around you.
Sure.
And so when you have a health challenge and you realize that the aging process relies so heavily on your health, I mean, I feel like that was an eye-opener for me this year, was that I really felt like if I didn't do something about my health, my physical health, that I was going to not age well, that I was going to have it's going to be rough. And so I deliberately this year, January 1st, I made a commitment to get this professional, personal trainer twice a week. I've got my crystal hot bed that my kids bought me. I've got my massage therapy, my pool, hot tub. I've got everything going to try to give myself, a year really to get stronger physically. So I think for me, that's what's happening now. Now everybody's journey is different. And, luckily, for me, family, I have a strong family. And so that I know that that's already there. So I don't feel like I have to commit to that. They're there. Some people, that's not true. It is really reconnecting with a family.
Sure.
And for a lot of people, isolation is a huge issue. So I strongly recommend that you form a family and, you form relationships around you that can support you as you age. That's one thing we concentrate a lot on at the center, because we know the journey can be lonely.
The word I was going to use for me is peace. Finally figured out what peace is, but you bring up a great point. Health. As you get older, you realize that it's really everything. You could have endless amounts of money. Look at Steve Jobs. And everything started Apple. Things appeared to be great until he got cancer. And the money that he had maybe extended his life a little bit more with experimental treatments, but in the end, he's not with us. And health is everything. Fear. There's so many studies have been done on fear. Of course, the acronym, false evidence appearing real. And they say that 90% of the things that we worry about, we fear, don't ever materialize. It doesn't even happen. You're wasting your resources, your mind, your energy, all of it on something. We can't predict the future. We don't know what's going to happen. And fear holds us back from doing a lot of things at any age, right?
For sure. And, I had sent it. I'm probably going to misquote myself on this one, but there's that word attachment, when you're attached to an outcome or you're attached to something. And when your attachment, when you become, when the attachment doesn't manifest itself and you become afraid and you fear the consequences of something, and then you become anxious. And then when you become anxious, you lose your way, because all of those things start to pile up and you forget, what it was, and you've totally, become, so anxiety driven over something that you were you're so attached to that you couldn't see your way. And I think that that's a lot about fear, that we want something to happen. And if it doesn't happen, you're afraid of what's the consequences. And then you just get so anxious, you're just lost. And I do think that is a struggle for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Meditation is a great way to deal with that.
Breathing, just taking some deep breaths. Breathing. And they say it is a scientifically proven here, a reset, 3 deep breaths when you get into that mode. And perfectly described, Suzette, when somebody has that anxiety, you can't even think because you're worrying about it. I'm going to be honest here. We're talking about health. So you open the door. I'm going to share. I was diagnosed with skin cancer. This is just a number of weeks ago. I've dealt with lower level stuff. This was a higher level. Out of nowhere, it grew like on my neck. They told me, it looks like it's stage 3. Right away, I'm like, you're faced with a little mortality, in your mind.
Yeah.
And then the fear, like, how are we going to do this? What are we going to do? But my gut told me, tap the brakes on that. Let's see where we're going. Even though they're saying those words, let's see where we're going with that. Mm-hmm. Took more tests, and it wasn't. It was just a tumor that needed to be removed. Had the stitches taken out today. And perfectly okay, no problem. But if I really, and I admit, I went down the rabbit hole for a few days, like, oh boy, like what is going on with that? But back to false evidence appearing real. Yeah. If I worried about it, it would have been a waste of time because it wasn't anything. So I just like, all right, we're live day by day, live in the moment, because we can't predict the future.
We can't predict the future, and I'm glad that your cancer was taken out and controlled, and
Thanks.
But again, you can see just how it happens. We hear something, we have an expectation, it happens so fast to us, and if you can recognize it and stop it, you're going to be healthier in the long run, because the anxiety is what drives us sort of bonkers and makes us make bad decisions and really becomes destructive. So yeah. I really encourage people to, as soon as you feel that anxiety start to build, is to put the stop brake on, breathe, and say, and you have to talk to yourself, and you have to rationalize, say, you know what, let's wait, let's get another opinion, let's wait till the tests come in,
sure.
and work through it. I think that's really critical. So, and I have to say one thing, I'm sure everybody watched the SNL special, the 50-year celebration of SNL. Mm-hmm. And you can see all of these icons who we have watched over the years and now are in their, 70s performing and 80s performing. And it made me really think about our aging process and the stories we tell ourselves. And I think we've been fortunate to be able to see iconic figures age well and continue to perform and continue to be out there on the stage. And I'm sure a lot of them have that same, fear of, gosh, I'm going out there to perform at 80 and, am I going to be received, or is this going to be a failure? But, they have embraced it and they're out there. And I found it enjoyable just to watch that part of the SNL.
I do the same exact thing when it comes to celebrities. The other night, somebody just mentioned Clint Eastwood, and they were fascinated by him. Something that I don't know where it came from, and I had to research him. I spent, the night in bed, I'm just scrolling like, interesting, 94 years old. To see what they're doing, how they're aging, what are they doing? And to your point on Saturday Night Live, Chevy Chase, he's had some health issues. He's taken some falls. I don't know what's going on exactly, but yeah, he's not the way he was. It is what it is, and, that's all good. But I must have looked at 40 pictures of him from that special. And I've been following him ever since I heard he had some health challenges. Every single picture, you can feel his energy. He's got challenges. But even with him hanging with younger stars, older stars, and I had to look at every single picture of him because I wanted to feel what he was feeling. And I could see it like, so what? You got some stuff going on. You're still living life, and good for you. Yeah, I find it to be inspiring to see that generation, because that's the generation that I saw on TV. I'm a little 10 years younger than that, but that is what I see, and that's what our children are going to see too. Is the people that are it's that 10-year cycle that we see in aging, and I think it was really inspiring to see the people up there performing and talking and kind of. All connected through that community of SNL. So I think you can see how community is important, that even over 50 years, and there aren't many shows that last that long, and clearly that's an indicator of how strong people feel about that community. So I think it's worthy to look at individuals who are aging well and think about what they're doing, right or wrong. And most of them, I would suspect, their aging process has very little to do with how much money they make or their notoriety.
They're how
Notoriety.
famous they are.
Yeah, notoriety.
That
Yeah,
one didn't come out right. That one didn't come out right. But yeah, so I think that's interesting. I mean,
I do too.
Aging doesn't care how much money you have, or the process just occurs for all of us, and it has to stay positive. And the only way to stay positive, I believe, is to get out there and get going. Just do it.
Inspiring is a wonderful word that you just used. And as we're talking, I just take it for granted. Saturday Night Live, been around a long time, blah, 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 blah. When you say 50 years, I'm like, it just hit me. It literally just hit.
Yeah, it's a long time.
50 years. Like, what? And, I wish I was around for the beginning of those. I'm kidding. Wow. It's just amazing. Wonderful talking with you today. The center, what's the best way if somebody wants to learn more?
So you can go to our website, nmagelessliving.com. You can email me at Suzette at nmagelessliving.com. Love to hear your comments. And remember, aging is part of life, but agelessness is a way of living.
Put a period at the end of that sentence. That encapsulated.
I finally got that one right.
That encapsulated everything that we were talking about today. Thank you so much for being here. Truly appreciate it.
Okay. Great. We'll see you next week.
You got it. We'll be right back. Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.